What is going on, all you Pokemon collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan, the PikaPikaPaPa, and here we are with what I consider the holy grail of grading data. Every single month, we get this awesome data dump, and it is just so impactful, and it is so amazing. It gives us all kinds of macro-level information about what's going on in the hobby, and specifically, obviously, we're going to be looking at grading data from PSA, SGC, CGC, and Beckett, but we're going to double-click into PSA, because if you look at the graph on the far left here, those are the grading volumes for those four different companies, and look, PSA is up there and everybody else is so low I have to add a second graph there in the middle to see how they've been tracking for the last couple years. So PSA obviously has the most grading volume, so we're going to be looking at their most graded cards, the most graded sets, like the most graded characters. We're going to look at all kinds of awesome stuff throughout this video, and we have been doing this video series for a long time, and we always walk away with some really cool learnings. So with that being said, let's jump right back into it. So you will see here again, if you reference the chart there on the left, you'll look at overall PSA grading at the top and all of the other grading card companies there at the bottom. And the thing about PSA is it has been a bit of a roller coaster. It has been up and down and up and down, and along the way they've had some of the biggest months in the history of the company. But the thing that I was really looking for last month was it going to be an up month? And it was, which is great. Now August, which we're just starting off into right now, August is going to be one to keep a finger on the pulse of and to keep an eye on, and I'm going to explain to you why later on in this video. You know that the last couple video series that I've done, it has not looked great for TCG grading in particular, right? We have seen a lot of strong grading volume from things like basketball, baseball, football, but TCG has not been hot, and we have a whole lot of reasons why, and we're going to talk about it throughout the course of the video. But I will tell you this, we see a bit of a bounce back month here in the TCG space. Now, if you look on the far right, that is exact TCG grading volume for those big four companies from the month of July. And you will see PSA graded almost 500,000 TCG cards last month. Now, that is a strong month-over-month growth. They are up 10% versus last month. Now, you will see that year-over-year, they're down 14%. However, I called this out last month, and I want to say it again at the beginning of this video. Last year, in the month of July, was when PSA actually opened up that grading center in Japan. And that grading center in Japan got absolutely hammered. So the July grading volume in the TCG space for last year was through the roof. So you got to take that negative 14% year over year with a huge grain of salt. And I'm going to be honest, that is actually better than I thought it was going to be. So when you look at CGC right there, CGC had a strong TCG volume month over month, up 3%. Year over year, it's up a huge number. It's up 200%. But CGC also has a partnership with one of these mystery box companies. So I think that's driving a whole lot of that year over year increase. Now, when you look at Beckett, again, I say this every month, and I hate to beat the dead horse, but I love Beckett. Beckett's a big part of my collecting origin story from back in the day, running the mailbox, getting that magazine, because the internet didn't exist back then. But Beckett just can't seem to figure it out from a grading perspective. I feel like they've pigeonholed themselves into the black label, and that's it. So I think people are only sending the absolute best of the best to them. They're not getting the rest of the cards being sent through for grading, and so their TCG volume month over month is down 6%, pretty much flat to last year. But then when we get to SGC, now I will say this, the data source that I use here, the last couple months there was some data pull errors from SGC, so that is corrected now. So if you look at the bar graph in the middle, you'll see SGC has flown up there. So SGC has actually surpassed CGC now that we've back added in those cards that were missing. It was about, I don't know, about 20,000 cards that were missing over the last couple months. They've been added back in. So even though SGC does not have a partner with a mystery box company, their grading volume is up over CGC. Now, PSA and SGC, they've merged. PSA purchased SGC, but we haven't seen a whole lot of the, we haven't seen a lot of the integration between the two companies yet. A lot of times when a merger like this happens, when an acquisition happens, they're just going to operate as independent subsidiaries for a while everybody kind of gets to know each other and they feel out the lines of business. But I do think that we will see those two companies become more integrated as time goes on. So now, as I said, we're going to look at a lot of fun stuff. We're going to look at sets and cards and just all kinds of information. But as I say at the beginning of every video, we put a ton of work into this stuff here at the PikaPikaPaPa channel. We've been doing this series for a long time. So if you enjoy it, if you want some data-driven approaches, this is a fantastic channel for you. So hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you like what you see, give us a thumbs up. And if you have questions or comments, drop them down below. I can't thank you enough for watching these videos. It means a ton to me that you spend time with me. And I also just want to let you know that those three small things go a long way in helping my channel out. So I always got to put that plug in. Now, next one right here, let's start looking at some of this data because that's what you're here for, okay? So we start off with the most graded sets, and English 151 and Japanese 151 have been dueling it out for a while there at the very top. I mean, it has been months and months on end. Now, remember, this video represents grading volume, not submission volume. So when something happens like the Japanese 151 reprint that we recently went through, it takes a while for those cards to be sold and ripped and then sent and then graded and all of that. So last month we started to talk about how Japanese 151 was going to start building a bit of a lead over English 151. Not only that, Japanese 151 has been out for a little bit longer, but that's exactly what we see, right? Big jump, up 61% month over month in overall grading volume for Japanese 151. So that is a huge, huge jump. And even English 151 saw a big jump in grading volume from last month to this month's data. So the interesting thing is going to be, lots of talk about the English 151 restock. More product is going to be hitting the market. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think all of us expected it. It's just part of the Pokemon space that we're in. Rarely do we have a product that launches and it never gets restocked or reprinted. Listen, it totally makes sense. What kind of effect is it going to have in the market? We're going to have to see, but it is really, really interesting to see just how many of these English 151 cards have been graded. You will see in that column right there, the total graded all-time, over 140,000 of those cards have been graded. Now, when you compare it to a set like Crown Zenith, the English Crown Zenith, which is right there below it, there's been 193,000 Crown Zenith cards that have been sent for grading. And when you think about the two sets, there's a pretty interesting comparison there. I mean, the awesomeness of the cards is both deep and long, right? Like, there is all kinds of awesome cards in both of these sets. So it's not just one or two chase cards that are being sent in for grading. I mean, the whole lineup for both of these sets is really incredible. So obviously you're going to have just an overall uptick in grading volume because of that. And so it's going to be interesting. Crown Zenith, it's hard to believe the final Sword and Shield set, we're still getting launches of that, right? There's a brand new Sam's exclusive box. I think it's called the Air and Sea collection that's coming out. It's got Rayquaza. I think it's got Kyogre on it. So there's still more Crown Zenith that's coming out into the market. And obviously we've got a 151 restock as well. V-Star Universe is another thing I talk about all the time. I mean, V-Star Universe is at 439,000 cards from V-Star Universe have been graded, which is just an insane number to think about. It's just a huge number. So that's one of the sets that we track in another video that I do, because when we saw that it was going to be graded so much, we wanted to get a finger on the pulse of what that would do to the volume overall. And then the 1999 Pokemon game, love seeing the OG set of all OG sets on there. We got Evolving Skies on here. What was interesting to me is Evolving Skies, the total number of cards that have been graded from Evolving Skies is at 165,000. Well, guess what? That Crown Zenith, which I just talked about, there's only been 193,000 graded. So there's only 17,000 less Evolving Skies cards that have been sent to grading than Crown Zenith. Now, you can't compare the two sets. That's like comparing apples to oranges, right? But it was interesting just in terms of overall grading volume. And the other thing I called out here is there's only 2 Japanese sets that are left on this list. If you were watching this channel, I don't know, 8 or 9 or even 10 months ago, this list was almost all Japanese, right? Japanese was incredibly hot right then. We talk about how markets rotate over time here in the Pokemon space. So the English side is getting super hot now, and the Japanese is really starting to cool off just a little bit. So those are your most graded sets. We got some big numbers on here, and we also have some big jumps month over month. Keep an eye on that English 151 if this starts to hit the market really, really hard. The next ones we talk about are the most graded cards, and it has gotten incredibly boring to talk about the card that is at the very top here. Every single month it has been Pikachu with gray felt hat. There is almost 50,000 of those cards that have been sent in for grading. Now, the other thing that I call out here is the 1999 Pokemon game Charizard Holo has been on this list for 4 months in a row, and I want to make sure everybody understands that includes first edition, shadowless, unlimited, base set 2, like all of them are lumped into this number. So don't think that that's just one of those individual ones. This is all of them. But still, even though it's considering all of them, there's been 62,500 of the granddaddy of all cards sent in for grading. And then when I compare that to this ultra modern Pikachu with gray felt hat at 50,000, it really is incredible. I mean, the next biggest card on this list is that Magikarp from Triplet Beat over there on the Japanese space, coming in at 24,000. Most of these are in the teens at worst, single digits. It's just amazing, the overall grading volume of that Pikachu with gray felt hat, considering how new it is. And it's still holding its price pretty well, which is amazing. Now, The other thing that kind of gets lost a lot of times when we do this video, because it is so populated with Pokemon information and facts and cards, is that this is for all TCG. This includes Magic the Gathering, this includes Yu-Gi-Oh!, this includes Lorcana, right? This includes One Piece, for goodness sakes. We used to see One Piece on here every so often. So look, the number 4 most graded card in the TCG space is actually a Dragon Ball Z card, which I think is fantastic. I always love it when other TCGs get up here on this space, and not for nothing, but it has been a while since we've seen One Piece on here. There is going to be a One Piece update here later on, but it's interesting. I don't know what's going on in that space. It's not really my cup of tea, but I'd be interested to hear if people think it's starting to cool off after that incredibly hot start that it had. So really cool list of cards on here. I mean, it's fascinating. Charizard's obviously the biggest and the baddest. We got 4 different Charizard cards on here. We got a couple Japanese on here. I love that Mew from Paldean Fates, which is on here. Absolutely one of my favorite cards. So it'll be interesting. We'll see if anybody's going to be able to dethrone Pikachu with gray felt hat up there, but I'm telling you what, it has been a while, and it sure hasn't happened yet. So maybe next month will be the one, because you can see month over month the overall grading volume of it is down 19%. So maybe next month it'll fall off the top. Now, next ones right here are the grading by category, and I started this all the way back, I don't know, in December of when I first started doing this. You can actually see at the months down there how long we've been doing this video series for, you know, almost over a year and a half at this point, so that's really cool. But what I do with this right here is I look at the total volume of TCG cards that have been sent in for grading, and then I combine what I call the ball sports area, right? Baseball, basketball, football. Obviously, those are the big 3 sports here, at least where I live in the USA, and those have the 3 biggest grading volumes, and then I break them out. So the orange line on this graph represents the total number of ball sport cards that have been sent in for grading, and the blue represents the Pokemon line, right? And you can see that for the first, I don't know, for the first year, you can see that the orange and blue were really, really tight. And I've always had this theory, you know, I started off my collecting journey in the sports card space, and I transitioned to the Pokemon space because I think it has a brighter future and I can enjoy it with my family. There's all kinds of reasons why I would rather be in this space than the sports card space. But for the first year, we saw that they were really neck and neck in total volume. But I will tell you this, ever since 2024 has come out, Ball Sports has been absolutely kicking the TCG card space's grading butt. Now, there's all kinds of reasons for that. We'll talk about it later on in this video, right? I think the grading quality, or the overall card quality for the Scarlet and Violet era was kind of down. Scarlet and Violet has taken a little while to find its feet. Obviously, the middle and end of any new era in the Pokemon space, they have some of the banger cards that come out then. So there's all kinds of reason for it, but I'm telling you right now, it has not been a great volume grading trend here in the TCG space, and we've talked about that a lot. So the thing that's excited me the last 2 months is we have seen the blue and orange line at least move directionally in the same pattern, right? They both came down last month, they both came up this month, so seeing them move more in lockstep is starting to make me feel a little bit better about where we're at comparatively with those ball sports. So the next one we look at right here is the most graded subjects in the TCG space, and obviously last month was a down month, this month is an up month, so we see a whole lot of growth. Now, the new subjects, they don't really change a lot. You know, it's always interesting. It's always a big call out of mine whenever we see one of the names drop off and we see a new one jump on. And whenever we see a new one jump on, we understand that that can definitely be driven by individual cards or sets of cards for that character. So this is one we always talk about and call out. Now, Charizard, still king of the pack, but is only up 9% versus last month. And if you look from top to bottom, most of these are up double digits. I mean, we got a couple. The Blastoise is up 25%. The Eevee, big call out on the Eevee. We all understand why that Eevee card is up so much. Obviously, there's a brand new Eevee card out there, which is super hot. We saw that in the Japanese space. That was one of the top graded cards. I will not be surprised if that ends up being one of the most graded English cards. But then, as I said, we got One Piece on here, right? The Monkey D. Luffy. Now, Monkey D. Luffy made it all the way up to number 3 and held number 3 for a couple months, and it has been slowly working its way down. And one of the things that was interesting to me is if you look at that growth column in the far right, literally every single one is in the black. Every single one is up versus last month, except for Monkey D. Luffy in the One Piece space is down 10%. And again, that is not my area of expertise. I don't even pay attention to the One Piece space. I have read that those cards are becoming harder to find in the wild, which would be good for value. And if you can't find the cards, you certainly can't get them graded. So maybe that's part of what's going on there. I would love to hear from any experts in the comments down below what's going on. But I will say this, I don't hear as much about it as I used to. So who knows what's going on in the One Piece space. But I thought that was a really big call out. And it would be a little depressing if it falls off next month and it's all Pokemon cards. I like having some other TCGs represented in this list. Next thing right here that we're talking about is gem rates by era. And this is something that I just say, take it with a grain of salt. You shouldn't use use this information to determine who you're going to grade with, but it is really interesting to me to see the overall gem rates in the sports card space, in the TCG space, and they break it down by decades, right? You can see in the 2020s what the gem rates were, what the 2010s were. You can look at it by sports cards, by TCG cards. Really interesting information for me. Now, last month, a lot of the TCG grading volume, gem rates in the 2020 ultra modern era was relatively low. This month, we've seen it spike back up, okay? So we're talking about PSA is up 9% versus the previous month. Freaking CGC is at 61%. That's up 13% versus the previous month. And Beckett, I don't know what's going on in Beckett. Beckett is always going to be organically higher just because of what I said earlier in this video, right? People are mostly black label chasing, so people are sending the very best of the best out to Beckett in hopes of getting that coveted black label, but coming in at almost 90% gem rate in the 2020s still seems crazy high to me. Now, there are some things that are going on right now, like Scarlet and Violet quality is obviously getting better. We've seen that improvement over the last couple sets, so I would expect that maybe this gem rate overall will start to trend with that, but it'll be something to keep an eye on to see how it pans out in the month of August. Next thing we're looking at right here, and this is one of my favorite graphs, and this is the TCG cards graded by month at PSA, and I think this is the best visual representation of what's going on. And the biggest thing here is if you look at the blue bar graph all the way on the far right, July 24, you can see that from December 2023, when it hit that 568,000 high, it has been working down 530, 480, 481, 437, 438, you know what I mean? 376. It has just been on the downward trend for all of 2024. That's what I was alluding to earlier. And we finally see an uptick in the month of July. Now, I also use this to start looking at year-over-year comparisons, but as I said, look, this is when PSA Japan opened. Look at that jump from June to July last year. I mean, it was absolutely crazy, from 362,000 cards graded to 514. So that pretty much makes last year's comparison a little bit hard to compare to, because I'm sure there was a lot of pent-up cards there in the Japanese market, and as soon as that thing opened, instead of, thinking, could I send these to California? Should I send them? There was no doubt. There was no question. They just absolutely flooded it, and a ton of those cards got graded. And so, what I'm really looking at here are these couple of months. I'm trying to compare 2022 to where we are now, because that's going to give us, a better directional idea of how the hobby is faring. And I think we're in a good spot. I really do. I think August is going to be a solid month. Obviously, it's something I'm going to keep an eye on. We're starting to see Scarlet and Violet hit a little bit of its stride. We're starting to see quality improving. Obviously, if there's an English 151 influx into the market, we're going to see some more grading volume. And again, grading volume isn't good or bad. I don't want everybody just to think that this is a blanket statement that more volume is good, less volume is bad. But when I see more volume, it just lets me feel that people are more in the investing and collecting side of things, right? It makes me feel that people think, hey, this card has value, it has future growth potential, I'm going to send it to PSA because I think I can sell it for a premium, and that's why I keep an eye on this stuff. Again, more slabs doesn't equal good slabs, but more quality slabs is certainly a great thing for the hobby, and I get fired up about that. And then the final slide that I always talk about right here, this is just overall grading in the card space, and the roller coaster continues. If you look at those last 5 green graphs, you see PSA goes up, they go down, they go up, they go down. They're up this month, and now what is going to happen next month, I absolutely don't know. But I'm excited about the better quality in the TCG space. I'm excited that we're going to be getting into some absolute fire Scarlet and Violet sets. I think that's going to help overall. And the overall hobby, just the momentum in the card collecting space, in my mind, I feel like is heading in a great direction. I think we're in a really, really strong market. I think it's going to continue to be a great avenue for an alternative investment class. And I'm just excited to be here. I think we have a bright future ahead of us. Scarlet and Violet, as far as I'm concerned, has exceeded all of my expectations. Sword and Shield set the bar incredibly high. I think a lot of us were thinking, man, can Scarlet and Violet even come close? And I think with the sets that have already launched compared to where they were in the Sword and Shield era, plus all of the awesome sets we have on the horizon, I think the Pokemon Company did a great job of setting us up with another epic era that we all should be really proud of and excited to be a part of the collecting and investing space in. So with all that being said, hey, if you enjoyed this video and you like the content, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Give us a thumbs up if you had fun. And if you have a question or comment, drop them down below. I appreciate you more than I can say. I hope you have an epic one, and I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye.